Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Playful Humans podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Playful Humans. And this week we have Juan, Punchy Gonzalez. He is an artist, a musician, recorder, producer, and magician, the way he can make himself disappear on the virtual background. We're not even sure he's real. At this point, it could just be AI generated. But we're going to talk to him about how he plays for a living. He has got a new project out. It's called Cosmic Punch. Go to cosmicpunch.com for more information. And if you're looking for Playful Humans, playfulhumans.com. It's that easy. Here we go. One more woohoo one. All right, there we go. We did it. Punchy, we like to start with the joke of the week here on the Playful Humans podcast. The joke of the week this week is brought to you by spiders. Spiders are massively powerful. They control everything on the web. All right, the actual joke of the week is, what did the duck say when it bought chapstick? Put it on my bill. All right, can you beat it? Do you have a joke for us?
Pretty good. I mean, I can say the one can I say the one that I submitted to you? All right. Okay. What's the difference between a symphony orchestra and a bull?
A bull? I have no idea.
Well, in a symphony orchestra, the horns are in the back and the is in the front.
You cut out there. Yes.
No,
yes,
I know. And the anus is in the front.
You got the technical term.
I didn't know exactly what.
In the orchestra,
In the orchestra, the horns are in the back and the anus is in the front. And on a bull, the horns are on the front.
The other way around.
Yeah.
I love it. Jokes are always good when you explain them too. So I'm sure that'll get everybody started in the right mood.
It sounds better in the profane version, but I didn't know exactly what rating your show is, so I didn't want to go there.
Let it fly. Okay, so let's talk about Cosmic Punch first. The website cosmicpunch.com. This is your new project. What do you got going on there?
Well, this is actually the fourth Cosmic Punch record, but it's the second one as a solo project. The first two records where I had a writing partner named Ryan Mikulski, Ryan Cosmonaut, and then records 3 and 4, the Club of Nerd Dads, and this one, For All Nerd Kind, is a solo project. So it's a little different. It's a little closer to home, that kind of thing. I play everything on it, sing everything on it. The only song that has any collaboration is the 8th song on the record called Woke, which is it's a conversation argument between a woke and a non-woke person done in the style of Meatloaf. And
nice.
Yeah, so it's a 7.5 minute long ridiculous song with overproduced nonsense. And I hired a female singer named Samantha Martin from Florida, local for, and then I hired this guy out of Chicago, and I wish I remember his name. It's terrible. I should do this because I should remember it was over a year ago when I hired him, but he played a real horn section for me. So I have real trumpet, real saxophones, real trombones. So nice. It's insanity, and it's just way overproduced. And I like to use that word because, in this era where people are trying to get real with music and all this nonsense, I'm getting as ab-real as possible. I mean, it approached 120 tracks of audio at one point, and I was just like, this is insanity. Like, what's going on here? But, I started writing it when Meatloaf passed, and I was just like, okay, this is going to be like my kind of tribute to this genius of a singer. Of course.
Well, obviously the original Meatloaf song is now very much like a Me Too example and stuff. Right?
Which one? You talking about Paradise by the Dashboard Light?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, times change. You can also just say that it's indicative of the era and therefore doesn't fall under modern rules. I don't think it's fair to.
No, I don't think anything created before, but I love the ideas that you're playing with here. And if this show is very much about what you're talking about, I think when I was in radio and stuff and trying to be a performer, you know, people would say things about being a sellout or something like that. I'm like, anybody you've heard of is a sellout.
100%.
And nothing is real. It's all manufactured. These are just personas we're making up in our head. Like I was using my fake alter ego Romeo on the radio to go with my last name. And you're like, I just made up this character and it has nothing to do with me. And I can read or say whatever I want. I'm playing something here. And I think songs and art and other things should be the same way. They don't play by the same rules as actual humans, right? Is that fair?
Fair enough. There are some people that are like real people that are like in like reality TV and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And guys like the dudes in Jackass, etc.
Be careful about those news shows and stuff too. They really present things as fact and science sometimes when they're
that has a problem. That's a problem. Sorry, I'm such a nerd. I have like Star Trek noises on my phone whenever I get like some sort of notification. But anyway, that was the photon torpedo you might have heard. I don't know if you heard it or not. But anyway, you're right. And a reality show, don't believe it's reality. This is staged reality. These the ones that the YouTube reality types, meaning like the you know, like, oh, look at my house and we rent this crazy house for this crazy money because as long as YouTube's paying for it, we can do this, and we do these trick shots and we do this. I mean, all of that is staged. I mean, those random
the Real Housewives, there's nothing real about them. Reality shows are all scripted and produced and edited, and there's nothing.
I mean, they're real in the sense that those people exist. You know what I mean? Those people do.
Well, yeah, in the sense, but yeah,
do exist. You know, they're whether or not they're actually that life is up to the imagination, and I think that's the whole point.
So how do you approach this absurdity and playfulness? You said you're going for sort of the weird, the nerdy, the experimental and stuff that like I think is one, a lot more fun, and then it's also healthier. We're not trying to play this game between reality and I guess our creation.
Like in general, like okay, so before I started making this ridiculous silly music, I worked in heavy metal music, and I was a sound engineer and a record producer, and I made videos for MTV and stuff like that for various metal bands. You know, I did a lot of metal, mate, and I went all over the planet, you know, mixing audio for metal bands and pop acts and rock acts and all this different stuff, Broadway musicals, whatever it was that paid the bills at the time, right? But so working in all this quote unquote seriousness, but I've always been this very playful guy. I'm always the guy that I've watched Star Wars hundreds of times. I'm that kind of guy, you know?
Right.
So
I mean, I may or may not know what you're talking about there.
There you go. See, and I have 2 children. I'm one of those old dads. I started when I had my first at 44, right? I got my midlife. Well, I did my midlife crisis in my 20s and 30s. I think that's the way people kind of really should do it. The only drag is, of course, the older you get, the more health complications can happen. You know what I mean, and prevent you from being a dad. So maybe a little earlier than me, but now I have 2, and that's enough. But I have 2 boys, and one's 8 and one's 4, and my 8-year-old. He's getting into Star Wars, and I couldn't be any prouder. And awesome. And I'm that really awful dad that decorated his whole room with Star Wars before he even knew what it was. His mobile over his crib was these little micro machines of Star Wars, like Star Wars vehicles. And I replaced all of the like stuffed toys with these micro machines, and the engine that I got to spin his wheel or his mobile around, you could load MP3s into it. So I loaded the Star Wars soundtrack into it. This poor kid went to bed with the Emperor's theme. Dun 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 dun. You know what I mean? I've got all this really great footage of him just kind of staring at these like spaceships.
Never had a chance.
Never had a chance. No, I'm sorry. There is such a thing about parental indoctrination that, you know, it's a truth that we do hold to be self-evident. So,
yeah. Well, I love it. It sounds like we're, coming from a very similar place. I think you should, in your 20s, tour the world, make bad decisions, go for, take crazy swings. If you're gonna, be a starving artist, that's the time. But
That's the time to
there's
do
also a
it.
difference between starving and like upper middle class performers, and that's sort of who I try to highlight here. Is you can make a career for yourself, and as long as you get to keep doing it, the rest are really just kind of numbers at that point. The way I think about it, I think
Sure.
if you're loving what you're doing, sometimes when you're young, the low overhead helps and helps you get started. But sometimes there's nothing wrong with you know making money and doing what you love either.
Now it's true. Now I'm gonna just back to your point about the starving artist thing. There
Yeah.
is something that I think a lot of people like kind of don't get when they're trying to be artists in their youth. Okay. In order to really be able to do it, it means that you do have to like live in a small place with a bunch of roommates. Because if you're gonna not work and not make the money to afford a place on your own, okay, which is grown up stuff. Okay, if you want to act like a kid, you have to.
Hmm.
You're gonna have to. It's gonna suck, dude. You're gonna live with 4 dudes, 3 dudes, whatever, and you're gonna argue about washing dishes, and you're gonna do all that nonsense. But your rent's gonna be like a fourth or a third of what it would be if you were living on your own. Okay, and that allows you the opportunity to work a 30-hour week and pay the bills and still be able to gig at night or paint or whatever it is that makes you happy artistically. And this is the time to do it in your youth. It's very difficult. There are very few Colonel Sanders in the world. Colonel Sanders, I don't know if you know or not, but he
Yeah.
didn't sell his business, his fried chicken business. He didn't start that till he was like 50. Okay. But until that point, he had tried and failed a bunch of times. So you got to try and fail. Nothing is gifted to you. And it doesn't really matter how much, how good you think you are. That doesn't matter. There are so many people out there that are better than you and are willing to work. So
Do you think
that
that's why we don't see a lot of like 50-year-old artists with top 40, their first like top 40 hits? Is it really just the responsibility and the work that they don't have the downtime to be that creative or put that amount of work
no,
into
I
breaking?
think no, the reality is just like the Buggles said in 1981, man, video killed the radio star. So I
Mm.
mean, like if you look at pictures of any of the people that were doing pop, rock, and even adult contemporary in the 70s before people could actually see what they looked like, right?
Yeah.
Right? Once that happened, man, I mean, there's just no way that a band like Boston would be huge today. Have you ever seen what they looked like?
Yeah, I've seen them in concert.
Or
Yeah.
or even ABBA. I mean, as pretty as those girls were, they're not modern day pretty. You know what I mean? Like they're pretty. Okay, don't get me wrong. Okay, but they're not Dua Lipa. They're not that. So let's be real, right? So and also at the same time, no matter how young you were in the 70s and 60s, you looked old. That's just how it
Yeah,
was.
everybody did. It was crazy.
What's up, man? Like, dude, I read the other day that Archie Bunker's character was 46, mate.
Yeah. And he
Okay?
looked what, 56 now or something at
The
least?
Golden Girls were in their 50s. They're
Yeah,
golden
right.
years, right? So,
So
we're
crazy.
looking at Blanche and all these people, and they're like, man, they're 50, 51, 52. I mean, come on.
So let's talk about the flip side of
Yeah,
the starving artist then, because I do think people that continue their craft or start later, and that's what this show is about.
yeah,
Kind of do it in one of two ways. They either find a way to monetize it and work while they're doing their craft, and you flip from maybe being an athlete to being a coach or something,
sure.
and things you can get paid, or being the performer to being a producer like yourself, and other things that you can get paying gigs doing stuff that way. I was always that way too, hustling a lot. Other thing is, there's nothing wrong with the day gig and the muggle job where you pay the bills and then you get all nights and weekends. And sometimes if you're working remotely, you get a lot of time
Sure.
to practice your craft, or a lot of flexibility to make something fun happen for
I
yourself.
mean, I have a day job. I'm a sound engineer at a theater in the city. That's when I retired from touring. I got this awesome job, and so I have a day job, sure, you know. but and I have kids too, which makes it even less time. But
Right.
I changed. I used to have a full recording studio in my home, and I sold that house and moved to a new place, and I built a smaller one. It's more of a project studio because I don't. It's been so long since I've recorded full drum sets and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I mean, that just isn't a thing anymore. So well, isn't a thing for normal studios. There are some larger studios that are still doing that kind of stuff, but that's the big time money, and those are people that are doing that full time. I'm not doing that full time. So I like to say that my studio allows me the opportunity to buy new gear. I pay for my new gear and my software with my proceeds from my studio work.
Yeah.
And then I have the ability. Now I have these, and my solo music work allows me the opportunity to test and perfect new software for when I have clients in my studio, and not the other way
Right.
around. So if the trick is, as a grown up, and it's very difficult to do it with the Xbox and PS3 or PS5 or 3S3. I'm dating myself, or even PC gaming, because you don't really game on Macintoshes. Ha ha ha! A little stab at the Apple people. You don't game on
I'm with you on
Macintosh.
this one. Yeah, we're bonding.
And a little stab, you know. But you can either do that, or you can get a piece of creative software and learn how to do something like that, and then turn around and be able to sell the skill that you've developed through your artwork. And that's
I
pretty much
love
how
that. I
I.
love double dipping. That's been my whole career, Punchy.
Yeah.
I would do an event for somebody and have them buy a prop that I needed for a stage act that I could repeat over and over again, or make enough money to buy, a new computer or that software, or new speakers, or whatever we need. And you just kind of piece it together over time. And then, like you said, you're double dipping. You're learning on paying jobs that are skills you can use for your art, or you're learning in your art skills and stuff that you can use for the day gig. And I love that. I think it makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, typically you'd want to do it the other way around. That you would you would learn your art and then get paid for the skills you've learned from your art, because that way people aren't waiting for you to do
Right.
something. That's always the worst. Is like when you're in a paying situation that is based on what you say you're good at artistically. Someone's seen your work or heard your work and said, "Wow, that guy's really good at this. I'd like him to make a record for me, or make a video for me, or do my photos, or do whatever." And then you get on the job side and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute, hold on a second, I forgot how to do this. Hold on a second." And then you're like
Right.
searching, that doesn't instill an awful lot of confidence. So you want to, you're better off learning your craft on the side and then perfecting your craft for the money. Yeah,
I agree with that. The only exception I found is that sometimes, like, for bigger projects, they just have bigger budgets, and they have like different resources. So this podcast is one that's just for mine. I also host one for a sales training company
right.
that has over 3.5 million downloads. There's like 5,000 people a week. They got a big budget, sponsors, and all kinds of stuff that I learn how to deal with that next stage of growth, ahead of time, before I get there with this podcast and stuff. And so I totally agree with you. And in a perfect world, you would do that. But sometimes it's really fun. Like, I'm sure you did with music, right? Like,
Sure.
you work for a bigger studio, you get to go play with the coolest toys. And then you come back to your home studio and go, wow, look what I just learned, or look at that amazing opportunity to get
and I've been in situations where people have asked me to do something that I've never done.
Yeah.
I've just never done it. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. Yeah,
Be honest
here we
about
go.
that. Yeah.
I'm like, well, I've never done this, but it doesn't mean I can't, I mean, like there, yeah. I mean, sometimes you are limited by rendering times and power and computing cycles and those kind of things. You know what I mean? Like there are limitations to job site performance, but yeah, you're right. And if somebody does have this crazy budgets and they can buy gear, and you're like, "Hey, listen, we need to buy a new server because this thing, I need to render these frames out, and it's going to take 3 days, or I can do it in an hour, and then we can use it for future projects," that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I can't tell you the amount of album budgets that went into my studio that paid for my new gear, and then I can turn around and make more money with that too, so. Yeah.
I love that. Any other lessons that you've kind of learned along the way of making a playful career, of just how you over the years balance, the paid work versus the passion projects, or how to jump from one gig to another when you're not necessarily on salary, especially when you were touring and stuff like that? How did that work out for you?
Well, during my touring years, I would schedule my studio time for when I was home, obviously.
Hmm.
And sometimes the two things didn't quite work out. I would have an album project that would overlap into a tour, and I would have to either make that decision of making that phone call saying, "Look, I can't do your record or I can't do your tour," because fiscally it made more sense to do one thing over the other. And so you have to make it, like there's it's funny because this is the music business, right? So if anybody is going to be making money, I want to make it. It is what it is. You know what I mean? Like the capitalism is reality. It just is. And the more work you do, I try to take the Michael Caine approach to it. Not every movie's awesome, but at least I did it. And
Yeah.
and that's what it is. So, and that was a quote from him.
I always said I'd rather be working and playing. I mean, would you rather be playing music or sitting home on the couch waiting for another gig? Like
Waiting
sometimes
for the right
you,
gig.
right.
The
You can
right
learn a lot from bad gigs. You can practice cool things,
Absolutely.
For me, it was always a lot easier to fail in front of an audience of like 5 or 10 in a bar instead of like a
True.
thousand on a theater stage or
True.
something.
Oh, and nothing's worse when a train wrecks in front of a bunch of people, and
Yeah.
that's the worst, and
Well,
I've
I
done it.
love bad gigs. You don't want them all the time, but sometimes they're freeing and you can learn a lot, and you're just like, it's a lot less stress. But I think you need a mix of both. You got to go back and forth between the two. Um, and I think the same thing goes for like the work and the play sort of things. Like you need paying gigs. You also need to be able to express yourself without any sort of constraint. It's not one or the other. It's probably a yes and situation.
Yeah, it's a yes if you can situation, I think.
Oh, there you go.
It's a yes if
That's
you
how you do
can.
it.
I mean, if you can do something, why not do it? Finding excuses not to have the opportunity to play. If you spend your entire life collecting Star Wars toys and you don't open one of them,
Yeah.
when is the payoff? How
Yeah,
about that?
I agree. I always said like I never turned down a chance to be behind a microphone or on a stage or on camera and stuff. So if people wanted free stuff and I'm going to show up on somebody's free podcast for publicity, great. I'm building my brand. I'm honing my message. I'm learning a lot. I'll do a bunch of charity gigs and then get in front of people and stuff. And as long as I don't have a better paying gig, and then if somebody wants to pay me $7,000 a day to fly out and do a keynote somewhere, I'll do that too. That's great.
Absolutely.
But I would rather be playing and honing my craft and doing something than waiting. I don't think there's a whole lot of benefit to not performing, right? To
Correct.
holding out and stuff.
Correct.
I want to ask you one more question before
Sure.
we wrap up and play a game here. It was specifically about the metal music because you seem like a fun guy and you've self-proclaimed nerd like me as well. And I've kind of noticed things like professional wrestling, that those are their personas, that the guys that are in that are not actually meatheads. They're actually theater
Sure.
people. And in radio, with these people with these big crazy personalities, are actually introverted. They're sitting in a dark room by themselves all day. They're not out being funny in public. Did you find the same thing in metal? Are most of them hardcore, or are these people like taking knitting lessons when they get off stage or stuff, and
Well, I will
and
say this.
not necessarily
Most of
matching?
most of the guys in metal are in it because they really like playing metal. They really like it. I mean, of
Good.
course, some of them get really tired of it and want to branch out and do other things, etc. It's like anything else, right?
Yeah.
But most of the time, these guys are true rivet heads. Now, do they drink blood and do satanic things off stage? No. Most of them really like their I'm dating myself again. Their Super Nintendo. No, a lot of these guys really like their video game systems, or in more modern day stuff that they're chatting with their girlfriends or potential girlfriends or that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
sure.
watching their Netflix, and they're pretty basic guys. They're it's or and some of the artists, you can't get a guitar out of their hand. So even when they're not jamming, they're jamming. And that's because I worked a lot in death metal. Okay. And death metal is more of an athletic type of music than say like your typical like rock and roll or metal, where they can kind of put it down and pick it up, whatever. These guys have to stay in top physical condition to play as fast and as accurate as they do. It's very similar to dealing with like a sports celeb who's like, all right, I'm up at 3, I gotta go run, and then I gotta go do this and vomit, and then move go on to the next.
Well, I think that's an interesting kind of side look at it. Is most of the people that do it sustainably are professionals, right? They're honing their craft, they're training, they're taking care of their body.
Absolutely.
They're not out doing, drugs late at night, and you don't make it very far.
Some do, but then they burn out quick,
Right,
and you can always spot them. You can always see it happening on tour. The guy that's getting drunk every night, like by about week 3 or 4 of the tour, man, his liver is shot. He's done. And he gets on stage, and he turns it on because he's got a little buzz. He turns it on, and then he gets onto the bus, and he's just
crashing.
Shot. And thank God for the odd day off here and there so he can sleep it off. Otherwise, it's just agony.
Yeah, you were talking about Boston. I got to drive REO Speedwagon around for a day, and they were older, and this is like in the 2000s, and their rider was like, "Yeah, we want some, Pink Lady apples and bottles of water." They're like, "That's all we need backstage. We just want to be, we're old. We need apples and water to put on a good show, not anything else at this point."
Keep in mind too, a lot of these older cats are recovering. Yeah. So it's just they have to they got to pay their bills. They got houses in all these crazy states like California, et cetera, where it's too expensive to live anyway, right? Or they got smart and they moved to one of the tax-free states,
Yeah.
And they're maintaining a livelihood because they're lucky enough to still have people interested in listening to their older songs being played live. They don't make records anymore because there's no need.
Right.
Because they're touring on the records that they made 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and they need to be on top of their game because their doctor told them that you can't drink when you're on lisinopril, and you can't.
That's perfect. All right, are you ready to play a game?
Sure.
Here we go. We're going to play a game with Punchy Gonzalez from CosmicPunch.com. This is Survey Says. We surveyed 100 people. I'm just looking for one of the top 5 answers to the question. If you get 2 out of 3 right, you win. Name something in the home that every member of the family probably uses.
The toilet.
Number 1 answer. There you go. Nicely done. And number 2. Name something in your house that you only have one of, but you wish you had more than one.
A refrigerator.
Could have gone bathroom again. That was number 2, but yes, refrigerator is on there. Number 4 as well.
I'm lying, by the way. I have 2 refrigerators, but I'm typically, everybody that has only one says, "Man, I wish I had 2." So
yeah, it's not bad, especially that big freezer. I think the
dude, I'm still there. I'm a Florida guy, right? So when the power goes out, we're shot, and I'm one of these people that's like, man, I want a stockpile of beef, So
all right, I'm going to give you a really hard one since you already won. Name something that dogs do that cats probably think is stupid.
Be loyal to their owners.
Ooh, I like that. It is not up there though. We have bark, chase tail, chase cats, chase cars, lick stuff, and sniff stuff. As the top answers. But you're a winner.
Cats do all of the above.
I don't think they're stupid at all. No, they're great. All right, you win a free 30-second commercial for whatever you want to pitch. How can you help us, or how can we help you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there has never been a better time than now to go to CosmicPunch.com. Right now, Cosmic Punch has a new record. It's called For All Nerdkind. 9 songs of straight-up nerddom covering the controversial subjects of Star Trek, Glenn A. Larson, anime, and afternoon cartoons. Right now, you can see the new video by Cosmic Punch. It's called I Love Anime, and it's available on YouTube and Rumble and everywhere else you can possibly see something on video that you may like, subscribe, share, and all that other nonsense, because if you don't, then you're a complete jerk and nobody likes you.
That is correct. I should ask you more questions about being a nerd, because I love the nerd culture and what you're promoting there. Go check it out, cosmicpunch.com. Until next time, if you are, and that was that was probably the best 30-second commercial we've had anybody do in like 170 episodes or so.
I know. I just came up with that. I didn't know you were gonna do that to me, so I tried to just put on my announcer voice and like coming soon to theaters.
Now, so help, control the pet population, have your pet spayed or neutered. We'll see you next time. Go to playfulhumans.com. Bye, everybody.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today. Keep on chasing the sun.